Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good.
Good morning. We are talking today about a problem that we know we all face and have it with our families or friends, and that is addiction. Many of our districts are seeing an incredible increase in heroin addiction, and we have been working on those issues for some time now. In 2014 alone, the 728 deaths from heroin in the Commonwealth of Virginia were larger than the deaths from traffic accidents, car accidents. So think about that. It is now larger. And think about that in comparison to the attention of, this problem and what it gets. So we did want to highlight this today. In 2009, in my district in Loudoun County, there were no deaths from heroin. Now we've had 29 related deaths and 115 overdoses. Fortunately now, with Narcan being available to our law enforcement and emergency responders, they're able to stop some of these overdoses from becoming deaths, but it is still a huge problem. We are working together with several task forces in my district, and I know so many of my colleagues are doing the same. We have worked to start these task forces in the Shenandoah Valley and in Loudoun County and Fairfax County in my district. And we know this needs to be worked on from every level, from the schools, our support systems. My sister's a guidance counselor. She works with this every day in Fairfax County. And one of the task force events that we were very privileged to have our next speaker, Nick Yakub, who gave a very moving discussion about how he has battled addiction. And he was at high school with my daughter at Langley High School in McLean. He's from Great Falls, Virginia, and he now works with the addiction community and making sure that other kids don't fall into this trap. He is the regional supervisor and a certified peer specialist for the Substance Abuse and Addiction Recovery Alliance of Virginia. So now, Nick, we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Barbara. Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Yakub, and I'm a person in long-term recovery from addiction, which means I haven't had a drink or any other drug in over 8 years. I'm also a certified peer specialist and a regional supervisor with the Substance Abuse and Addiction Recovery Alliance of Virginia, as Congresswoman Comstock just said. I started using marijuana and alcohol at the age of 10, added prescription uppers and downers in high school, added heroin and cocaine from the ages of 18 and 19, and it all funneled back into alcohol by the time I was 21. By the time I was 21, I was arrested yet again and entered recovery. Getting arrested saved my life, but recovery made it a life worth living. Over the past decade, I have watched people in this country panic over avian flu, SARS, Ebola, now the Zika virus. Yet addiction through alcoholism, by extension, has been recognized as a disease by the American Medical Association since 1956. And in 2016, 60 years later, society is still treating it as a moral failing on the part of the individual. The layman sees an addict lie, cheat, steal, without realizing it's symptomatic and diagnostic, and thinks it's a choice to do evil. And of course, no one wants to admit that it might be in their family or their community. As of 2013, an estimated 22.7 million Americans suffer actively from the disease of addiction. It's in your family. It is in your community, whether you're in the city, the suburbs, or rural America. This disease has plagued humanity since our beginnings. It is an equal opportunity destroyer of lives. It doesn't care about skin color, religious conviction, sexual preference or identity, your bank account, your job, intelligence, cultural background, your politics, legal status of your drug of choice, or any other aspect of our lives that we identify ourselves with. As a disease, it is chronic, which means it's lifelong, progressive, meaning it only gets worse with time, and potentially fatal. People think we choose to have this. It's been demonstrated repeatedly over decades that this disease affects the areas of the brain responsible for making choices. Our public policy should reflect that addiction recovery is not about bad people trying to be good, but sick people trying to get well. Here's the upshot. The recovery community in America as of 2012 consists of 23.5 million people. That's over 46 million people in this country that have this disease, with over half of them having found a solution. If you're struggling, you are not alone. Go out and seek the recovery community wherever you are. They continue to save my life on a daily basis. The recovery community does. Go to detox, go to treatment, outpatient, call your local 211. I could not do this alone. I don't know of anyone that can do this alone. For the family members and loved ones of the addicts, there's help and support for you in the community as well. Talk openly and honestly about your struggles. Whoever, wherever you are, do not let the shame and stigma of this disease win. Thank you all for your time.
Okay, how do I follow that up? Nick, thanks for being here today. That was very, very, very insightful and helpful. And I also want to thank Barbara Comstock for bringing Nick today. They are absolutely right. You heard it from Nick. This epidemic does not discriminate. It is not about politics. It is personal. This can happen to anyone, and it can tear apart any family, and this can tear apart every community. In Wisconsin, where I come from, according to latest statistics, just like Barbara said, more people die from drug overdoses than they die from traffic accidents in our own home state. Many states, including ours, have stepped up to take on this problem. Now we need to take action at the national level. That is why the House will soon move legislation to combat this deadly abuse. I'll let Leader McCarthy get into the details about how we're going to do this. The more important point here is that there is common ground here. The issue of opioid abuse is an issue we will be tackling. The Senate has passed a very good bipartisan bill. The President has put forward some of his own good ideas, so we can get this done and we can win this battle, and that is why we here in the House are bringing our ideas to the table too, going through the committee's process to meet with the Senate so that we can make sure that we actually advance a solution to this problem. That is why it's important to follow the lead of people like Nick. His message is one of redemption. This is a very important message for all of us, personally and nationally. By coming together, we can help save lives and get more people on the road to recovery.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank Nick. In every single district, we have many Nicks, but we have some who are in a different stage, some who need to come forward, some who do not make it. That's why the House, you'll find the committees throughout this month working on this. You'll find that we'll work with the Senate. We'll come to a bill that helps solves the problem that the President will be willing to sign. I want to, point out a couple different people. One, Barbara Comstock, but I want to thank Sensenbrenner, Larry Bouchon, Susan Brooks, Evan Jenkins, John Katko, Charlie Dent, and countless other members, especially Chairman Upton, Chairman Goodlatte, and also Chairman Miller. There's a couple things that have been focused in this. You have a rise in the epidemic for women, and it's disproportionately affecting veterans. We want to make sure whatever we do here that we streamline, that we solve the problem as we go forward. I'm very confident that by the end of this month we'll have the legislation solved, be able to pass it, and move it on the floor in May.
Well, I want to thank Nick for coming and sharing his story and for encouraging other people to seek help. There are people with addictions who haven't yet, whether it's not they haven't admitted that there's a problem or haven't sought help for a problem. And the more and quicker that they do, the more they're going to be able to get their lives back. So I appreciate you coming to share that story and look forward to seeing the House take action to address this growing national problem. One thing I did want to mention, last week, every year I bring members down to go to the Gulf of Mexico and go tour a deep water rig in the Gulf. And we did that last week, had 8 members come down, a bipartisan coalition, and we went out to a rig over 200 miles south of the coast and saw how energy is produced in the deep waters. We were on a rig that produces over 70,000 barrels of oil a day and over 7,000 feet of water. And after that, we went and toured Port Fourchon, talked to people that work in the oil field industry, and talked about the challenges they face. One of the things that they face that may come out from the Department of Interior this week is the well control rule. a rule that, if brought forward by the administration in its current form, would actually reduce safety in drilling. And people that actually drill for a living safely pointed out how this rule, a one-size-fits-all rule from Washington, could actually make it less safe for drilling in places like the Gulf of Mexico. That's the last thing we need at a time when we're closer to energy independence, when our country is creating thousands of jobs. We don't need a rule from Washington that actually makes it harder to drill safely for American energy.
Well, I too want to thank Barbara and Nick for joining us here this morning. And Nick, hearing your personal testimony really reinforces why it is so important that we're taking action. The opioid epidemic is really wreaking havoc all across the country, whether it's small towns or large cities. And sadly, my home state of Washington is no exception, where we see some pretty dramatic increases in abuses and incidences. What I've heard from Nick today is what I've heard from many across Eastern Washington. No one can fight it alone. We can do more, and we should do more. It isn't about politics. It's about people. It's about people, young and old, moms and dads, some that have great wealth and others that are without. It's about survivors, though. It's about survivors like Nick. And if there's one thing to keep in mind as we hear these stories like Nick's, it is this. It's going to take more than one solution to cure this addiction and the spread of this epidemic. Our work in the House is straightforward. It's real, it's bipartisan, and those are the kind of solutions that we want to be bringing forward, getting on the president's desk, and that's what we'll be working on in the days and weeks ahead.
Questions?
Mr. Speaker, let me give you a quote from Donald Trump in the past few days, several quotes.
This is what it's always like here, Nick. Sorry.
The RNC, they should be ashamed of themselves for allowing this kind of crap to happen. The system is rigged, it's crooked.
Sorry. We're just talking about how we're going to ignore your question. Sorry. Yeah, right.
You have the right to ignore it, of course. The system
You have the right to ask it.
crooked.
So.
You know, you are going to be the chair of this convention, which for the first time perhaps in 40 years might need a chair to wield the gavel and maybe hit some people with a gavel, figuratively speaking. Have you started to think about how this is going to play out? I don't know if you want to get specifics, but have you started to think about what it's going to mean to be the head of this convention?
A little bit. I'll just say this. I'm not going to comment on what candidates are saying. The Rules Committee will decide with the rules, and we will follow the rules by the book. So that is, to the extent that I've given thought to this, and who does what, who plays what role at what time is something that has yet to be determined. But we will look for guidance from the Rules Committee as to what the rules are, and then we will follow the rules by the book.
Can I follow up on that? Then?
Now, Jonathan.
To get to the budget for a second, is it possible that you guys will go take up appropriations after May 15th and go without either a budget resolution or without a deeming resolution?
It's my goal to pass a budget. We're still having ongoing conversations with our members on that front. We're keeping all options open. We're not foreclosing any options, but you know me, I want to pass a budget. I think we should pass a budget, and we're still having those kind of conversations. So we haven't made any concrete decisions, and we haven't foreclosed any options.
If you do that, if you go without a deemer or without a budget resolution, would that be consistent with the regular order that you said you want?
Look, like I said, I'll just say what I just said, which is we haven't foreclosed any options. You know the rules. You know the rules very well. We know the rules. I think we should pass a budget, and we're still talking with our members on how we can get that done. Taylor.
The White House said last week that your response, that what you forced them to do on Zika is not going to be sufficient, and that they need more money sooner rather than later. We're just talking to some appropriators. It sounds like they're willing to do it maybe on a CR in September. If that's the case, why not do it before you go away for August?
I'm glad the White House, number one, took our recommendation and put the money that was already in the pipeline towards Zika that we recommended. So number one, I think the White House did the right thing by taking our recommendation to use the money that was already there in the pipeline. Number two, we will address this situation through the regular appropriations process as the need arises, and our appropriators are looking at how to do just that.
Dr. John LaFook, CBS News. Mr. Speaker, do you believe the White House when it says it needs the full $1.9 billion to fight Zika, over and beyond what has already been allocated?
Just what I said. The money's in the pipeline. Our appropriators are going to address this issue. If the need arises, our appropriators will address it in the appropriations process.
Be there eventually.
Speaker, also back to Jonathan's question on the budget here. I mean,
Did you say last already? Sorry. Okay, I'll give you last. Yeah.
as you look at this budget situation, we have not heard any degree of movement. I know you try to be optimistic about the situation. I know what your position is on the importance of budgeting here, but this seems like a really tight fix. And I mean, are you giving to what degree have you given consideration to what Jonathan was talking about, saying
Right.
okay, we might have to go another option because we have to do some appropriations bills here, and one of those things, either deeming or going without or doing a regular budget, has to happen. One of those three options.
All those options are options we're actively discussing. Our preference is to pass a budget, and we're still talking with our members about how and if we can do that.
Are you leaning in any direction though? Because again, that
No,
conversation.
we haven't leaned in any
seems like
direction.
it's progressing.
Yeah, the direction we are leaning is in a budget.
Is it progressing better? Are you
Yeah, we just had 2 weeks where our members did not have a chance to get together and discuss things. We are now restarting those kinds of conversations that we had now that we're back in town with each other. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Who's going to be your vice president when you run for president?